For 16-year-old high school students, an overnight field trip should have been a highlight of their school break, a time to create unforgettable memories. But what unfolded was a nightmare. Instead of the typical teenage mischief, it was their strict adherence to discipline that led to tragedy. This is the story of the Sewol ferry disaster on April 16, 2014. The sophomore class of Danwon High School was headed to Jeju Island for an overnight trip, a dream getaway for teens eager to spend time with friends away from parental supervision. On that day, 325 students boarded the Sewol ferry for the nearly 14-hour journey to Jeju Island. The vessel was a hybrid of a traditional ferry and a cruise ship. Its lower levels were designed for vehicles, containers, and cargo, while the upper levels featured cabins, a dining cafe, a karaoke hall, and a small convenience store. This was meant to be a joyful voyage. But what happened next turned it into one of the most tragic events in recent history. The Sewol ferry had undergone renovations a few years before this ill-fated trip. Additional cabins were added on the upper decks and extra cargo space below, raising the center of gravity and creating a left-right weight imbalance. These changes imposed new limits on its safe operating parameters. On this day, the Sewol was carrying 2,200 tons of cargo, including 185 cars. To avoid raising alarms during port inspection, the ballast water was reduced to just 760 tons, making the ship sit higher in the water and concealing its overweight condition. This configuration made the weight appear balanced, but resulted in a ship much harder to navigate. At 8:46 a.m., the third mate instructed the helmsman to turn 5 degrees to the left. 2 minutes later, she called for an additional 5-degree turn, but they soon noticed a dangerous list. In a critical error, the helmsman had turned the ship a full 15 degrees to the left while trying to adjust for the previous change. The sharp turn caused a chain reaction as cars and containers slid to the left, increasing the list. By 8:49, the ship was listing 20 degrees. The open cargo door submerged, allowing water to flood the area, increasing the list to 30 degrees by 8:50. The captain and most of the crew had returned to the bridge to assess the situation. At 8:55, the ship made its first distress call. The Vessel Traffic Service, VTS, like air traffic control for ships, was notified that they were rolling and in danger. Meanwhile, passengers were either having breakfast in the cafeteria or sleeping after a night of fun. They noticed the sudden stop and tilt of the ship, but didn't grasp the severity of the situation. The communications officer used the intercom to instruct passengers to remain where they were, claiming it would be dangerous to move. The students laughed and joked about the ship breaking or sinking like the Titanic, thinking it was all just a temporary issue that the professionals would quickly resolve. At 8:52, the ship's 30-degree lean became significant and unnerving. Water was flooding the lower levels from the cargo area, pulling the ship even lower and allowing more water to enter. At 9:14, the crew reported that the angle of heel made evacuation impossible. The VTS instructed the Sewol's crew to have passengers put on life jackets and told Captain Lee to order an immediate evacuation. At 9:30, he finally ordered the evacuation to begin. However, while the 15 officers on the bridge were informed, the rest of the ship had no idea. The ship-wide communications went through the guest services desk on the 3rd floor. The bridge on the 5th floor only communicated the evacuation orders through a two-way radio to the deck crew. It is unclear who received these orders or how they were shared. No officers left the bridge to confirm that the evacuation was being carried out, and according to surviving students and passengers, there was never an intercom announcement to evacuate. At 9:33, passengers and crew began jumping into the water. Nearby fishing boats and the Coast Guard, now on the scene, started assisting. Passengers near balcony areas on the upper floors managed to make their way off the ship, despite the severe 60-degree lean. At 9:38, the final communication from the ship's bridge was sent to VTS. Although the ship had lost power at least 30 minutes earlier, the lack of further communication was not due to a malfunctioning radio. The entire navigation crew, including the captain, had abandoned the ship. Meanwhile, the ship-wide notification continued to instruct passengers to stay where they were. Teachers and students remained in their cabins, leaning against walls, trying to stay calm and waiting for further instructions. They texted their parents, took videos, and called home to express their fear. These videos showed a remarkable bravery and discipline. Some male students climbed into the hallways to check on a small group of girls who didn't have life jackets, offering their own in a heroic attempt to help. By the time the Coast Guard arrived, the ship was leaning so far that there was little open space for passengers to exit. Only those who had moved to the upper open decks beforehand were in a position to get off the ferry. The rest of the passengers were trapped inside. At 10:17, the last text message was sent from the ship. By 10:23, the ship was completely upside down. This hopeless situation left rescuers paralyzed. Once the exit points were underwater, the teenagers working their way out were unable to save themselves. They would have had to navigate a maze of corridors and stairwells underwater to reach the open sea. Knowing the Coast Guard was nearby, they probably sought the highest points with available air to wait for rescue. Over the next hour, the ship sank lower until it was completely submerged. Parents and rescuers hoped that air pockets inside might offer refuge to those still trapped. The complete lack of communication between the various Coast Guard stations, the Sewol and VTS, kept crucial information from coming together. In the days and weeks that followed, many private divers entered the ship to recover the bodies of the lost passengers. Many crew members, company officers, and government officials were held accountable for their roles in this avoidable tragedy. Although many factors contributed to this disaster, the most glaring failure was not advising the passengers to move to the upper decks to prepare for a potential evacuation. This basic step could have saved hundreds of lives. The story of the Sewol ferry disaster is a heartbreaking reminder of the importance of proper safety measures and the dire consequences of neglecting them. Our thoughts are with the families and loved ones affected by this tragedy. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to know more, subscribe StoriesUntwist, press the like button, and share it with your friends.